Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Market Down Podcast. My name is Nick Cummings, joined this week by Danny Hernandez and James Gisante. Lots to talk about this week. Obviously, we're going to have to start with the big news of the week, the Friday night war that occurred over this past weekend. AEW's Rampage going up against the overrun of Friday Night SmackDown on FS1 this week. A lot of talk about the ratings coming out of this. I believe SmackDown did win the overall ratings war, but the big news is that in the head-to-head half an hour, AEW was able to edge out SmackDown. Now, this is big. It's been all over the internet. Tony Khan is throwing a fucking parade. He's so happy. James, what does this mean for everybody? And start with AEW, and then we'll talk about SmackDown in a second.
Well, the big news is that for the first time since I believe 1998, a wrestling company went head to head with WWE and beat them. That is gigantic. There is no way to short sell this. There is no way to not see the magnitude of this. There hasn't been a true contender for WWE in decades. And now it's not just the which one do you like better, which one do you think would win. Straight up, for 30 minutes, AEW beat WWE. And this wasn't NXT. This wasn't a talk show. This wasn't some half B show, main event. This was SmackDown, one of the flagship shows of WWE on Fox. This is a win for AEW. Tony Khan talked a big game, and he's been clear. He felt backed into this corner. It's not a decision he was looking to make. It's not a fight he was looking to fight, but the truth is he answered the call, and for those 30 minutes, AEW was the winner, and it's going to... I can't see how it doesn't impact how TV stations, how networks, how big executives are going to look at wrestling going forward.
Yeah, I saw that the numbers for the overall episodes came out, and then in those, it had said that SmackDown had overall beaten Rampage, which I think we all kind of expected. SmackDown at this point is obviously supposed to be a bigger show, and Rampage is in the time slot of death. It's 10 o'clock on a Friday. It's hard to be around at 10 o'clock on a Friday to watch wrestling. Most of the time I usually end up watching it sometime the next day. So after that, then the head-to-head ratings came out, and everyone thinks that WWE leaked those initial ratings because they made them look like they win. I mean, hell, I think Darren Ravel reported that, and then Tony Khan dunked on him, which made me happy. Obligatory fuck Ravel. So, Danny, this is huge news for AEW.
Yeah, this is a big deal. This, I don't want to overhype anything. I'm just happy that it happened. I'm happy that AEW stood their ground. They planted their flag in the dirt, or like Eddie Kingston said at the show we were at, they planted their flag in the concrete, and they weren't pushed around. And hey, not to just blindly praise AEW, I think a lot of it has to do with SmackDown being on FS1 and not on Fox. As much as we were saying last week that it's not that hard to find FS1 and most people actually have it. It turned out it still made a difference. People, especially I think people watch WWE, are creatures of habit. They have their routines, and once that routine is broken in any way, that's it. They're not putting that much effort in to watch SmackDown. It's just what they're used to. If anything from that pattern changes, they do not change with it. They just let it go. And so I think AEW really capitalized on that. They took advantage of the situation, a situation that, you guys were saying, they were backed into. Their backs were the ones against the wall there. And, it's kind of funny. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I kind of think, SmackDown was a better episode than Rampage on Friday. and Rampage still came out on top. It was close. Not Rampage was good. Don't get me wrong. I just think SmackDown for once was like pretty good. Like, so I don't know. I just think it's a nice victory. I wouldn't go throwing it in every WWE's fan's face because overall they still lost in a way. And on any given Friday night, they would normally, I think, lose that battle for now. But it's a great badge to wear proudly right now. Just don't go. I wouldn't throw it in any WWE fanboy's face just yet.
I completely agree on that, Danny. And it's like I said last week. I think we can all agree. We don't want to see anybody lose. We want everybody to eat. We want everybody to prosper. And I think that's what happened. AEW won a battle, and I think WWE won a battle, you know? And like we keep talking about the war, but we don't really want there to be a war. We just want wrestling to be good, and we want both companies to be at the top of their game. And it's interesting because to me, historically, WWE always tends to do its best when they're backed into a corner. When all of their plans fail and they need to, on the fly, come up with something to make up for whatever fell apart, that tends to be when they get their most creative and their most exciting. So while I wish they didn't feel the need to do that half-hour overrun and go into AEW's time, the fact is that showed a hunger. That showed a hunger from WWE to be competitive. And if you're going to be competitive, you need to bring your A game. You said it. I don't know that I completely agree that SmackDown was a better show than Rampage. But you know what? The fact that we can even have that conversation means that WWE brought their game. Like, they rose their game up.
Well, let me just say, if the Bryan Suzuki match was on Rampage, not the buy-in, I wouldn't have even dared to have said that. But
they were good matches on SmackDown, though. The street fight,
Becky Sasha match was so good.
And
the street fight was great.
Yeah, the street fight with the Street Profits and the Usos for the tag titles was a really good match.
Yeah,
albeit pointless because the team going to Raw wasn't going to win the SmackDown. Tag titles.
Well, I mean, the SmackDown women's champions on Raw and vice versa. So
yeah, I can't wait for that belt switch.
And I know we're going to get into these shows because they both deserve to be talked about. They both deserve to be analyzed. But at the end of the day, it's a good night for wrestling. Granted, neither numbers were fantastic, but it's like you said, Nick, it's a Friday night. AEW has the death slot, and they can only bring CM Punk back so many times to break 1 million. So it's, you know, I'm just happy. I'm happy with wrestling. I'm happy with how this is going. And as long as WWE doesn't feel the need to constantly be fighting with AEW, but they're showing that hunger, I hope more of this stuff continues. I really do.
Yeah, it's more of a rising tide lifts all ships kind of thing. Whereas as long as everybody's competing and doing well, everyone's going to get better wrestling, and us, the consumer, are better for it. So let's get into some of these matches here. We'll start over on Rampage. That started with CM Punk versus Matt Sydal, and now that was going up against on SmackDown, Becky Lynch and Sasha Banks, which both of them were very good matches. I thought the Punk and Sydal match was a very technically well wrestled match. I was very entertained by it. The Becky Sasha one was good. I didn't love the ending, and that's just how it's going to be with WWE nowadays, especially because I thought it was a little predictable after the Sasha Bianca match. The same thing was going to happen. Like, turnabout is fair play is WWE's go-to at this point. So those went head to head. Like I said before, CM Punk and Sydal beat Becky and Sasha, but I think, James, that both of these were very good matches.
I completely agree. And it's good that Sasha got one win because she certainly lost against Punk on Twitter. And thank you. And they were great matches. I'm going to let Danny obviously cover more of the Sasha Becky match because I know he's way more emotionally invested in it than I am. But I mean, Becky's the man, you know, Becky's your man, you know, but I'm not even ashamed of how that came out, but I'm genuinely surprised Becky ate a loss. You know, I'm That's shocking. And I think it's necessary. Like, I know we were talking about how protected Becky's been, but I think it makes Sasha look great. I think it makes Becky as a heel champion feel a lot more vulnerable, which is what you want from a heel champion sometimes. You don't want them to all feel like these dominant champions. And I think on the Rampage side of things, Punk, I think this was Punk's best match. Like, nothing against Darby, nothing against Hobbs, but I think Seidel, who is, I know I joke about Seidel a lot, but what he brings to the table is undeniable. He's a veteran who can still go at a fast pace, and he's wrestled Punk before. He knows Punk's style, and they were able to put on a good match. And we're seeing the story develop with Punk. He's no longer just the guy, or he doesn't seem like he's going to continue to be the guy who's just happy to be there. He's struggling to get these wins a little bit. And I don't necessarily think we're going to see heel Punk, but at least not for a little while. But we're seeing a craftier, hungrier Punk develop on screen. And I think that's something we've all been ready for. Like, we had the moment where we were happy he was back, but now it's, all right, what is Punk going to be doing now that he's back? And I think this is, the seeds are being planted, and this is a really good start.
Yeah, it's becoming less, oh, I just got back and I want to wrestle certain guys, and more, all right, I'm here and I'm getting these wins. Let's see where this goes. He wants more, like you said. And going back to Becky and Sasha, Becky might have taken the loss there, but it wasn't clean, Danny, right? So I think she's still protected, despite the fact I don't like it.
Yeah, surprise, surprise. I don't like it either. And I understand what you're saying, James, but I still disagree with doing it because you should give that to Bianca. Becky's first pinfall loss in a singles match since 2018 should be to Bianca. Now, if Bianca beats her, it's just a little less special. Everything they're doing is making Bianca's inevitable win a little less special. And it's a throwaway match, and it doesn't matter, especially because I don't think Sasha's going to win tomorrow or yesterday, depending on when this came out. But I think it's ultimately, it's kind of pointless. It's a throwaway match. And like Becky said in her promo beforehand, that she finally mentioned on TV, like, oh, I haven't lost in X amount of time. And why do you start saying that just to immediately undo it? That's something you can build for weeks and weeks and have a payoff and have a huge crowd pop. It was like, not that the crowd didn't pop, because the crowd was super into that match and super into both wrestlers, but like, it's just, you got to build to that. You don't just throw that away, especially when now Becky has had a DQ finish, a tag match that also ended in DQ, and now a loss. She hasn't won a match since the squash, which is barely a match and more of like an angle. So I think it's a terrible move. At this point in time, literally, if they did this like 4 or 5 weeks from now, built to it in any sort of way, I probably would feel differently. But, anyway, match was phenomenal. Becky and Sasha looked great. I think it was Becky's, that's not saying much, but it's Becky's best match since being back out of the 2 full matches. But fun match. But as far as the Punk Seidel match goes, I agree that it was a fun match. This is my problem, and I keep ranting about this on this podcast, but give people wins on Dynamite, because Matt Seidel is one of the best records in AEW, but I never see him win because he always loses on Dynamite. So how can I care about this match? Granted, I got into it, but it's like I wasn't excited when they announced it. The only excitement I had was it's Punk, and it's still a novelty watching him wrestle again. And I don't know if you guys caught this during the match, but they kept building to this move. I think he calls it the lightning strike. It's Page's finisher. It's the Rampage. They kept building to that. He kept trying to go for a Punk reverse. He finally hits it so deep into the match, the crowd did not make a noise. They did not buy it at all, like that, because they didn't know I didn't know. Is that his finisher? I still don't know. Like, I thought he did the 450 splash or the shooting star press off the rope. Does he have a second finisher? I don't know about, because I don't watch Dark. Like, it's, again, fun match. It just, the problem with guys like Evan Bourne who never get wins on TV, where it's I can't get into their matches on Dynamite because I know they're going to lose no matter what their record is. You got to give these guys more wins. Granted, though, the match was great. I do agree it was Punk's best match since coming back. It's just the stakes I did not feel there at all. But they came close. They really almost made me buy in despite me not caring about Seidel. And that's not because Seidel's bad. It's just because he's not used on TV.
You know, I don't know if it was still during the buy-in over on YouTube, which we'll get to in a few minutes, or at the very beginning of the episode, but they had a small video package about the history between Punk and Seidel, and I thought it was a very good and quick build to that match, which got me way more invested in it than I originally was. And I thought commentary did a decent enough job of selling the lightning strike as this move, because I believe Excalibur said nobody had kicked out of it before. So that part was interesting. But you're right. Like, I'd never seen it before. I didn't even know what move it was. Like you said, like, I didn't know it was the Rampage. So for crowds who don't know what that is, they're not going to react the way commentary would prefer them to. It's a build that they didn't have. I would like to make another note about this this head-to-head segment. This was the segment of Rampage where Tony Khan bought out the commercials. There weren't any commercials for the Punk Seidel match, which I thought was really interesting. James, do you think we'll see him do that again, or is this a one-off thing for the head-to-head?
I think this was a one-off thing for the head-to-head, or at least until there is a major thing worth doing it for. But he's expressed that it is an expensive endeavor. And he was surprised that WWE was doing commercial lists for their bit on TV. And I think he just did it to keep up with them. I think it was the right move. You know, especially for a match like Punk versus Seidel, which Seidel is going to bring the fast-paced action. But I think more than anything, this was... Sorry, I think this was kind of a dick measuring contest, and yeah. I think he won. I know Vince has the giant-sized grapefruits, you know, but I think TK might be he might be packing some heat too.
Damn, Vince McMahon with the grapefruits, James with the peach.
Very fruity over here.
All right, let's get into the next part of this head-to-head segment. The Bunny and Ruby Soho went up against the contract signing between Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. Now, this part of AEW's Rampage also beat out SmackDown, which is a lot of people were surprised about, considering it's two of WWE's top guys, albeit in a contract signing, against AEW's women's division, which has been, I don't want to say much maligned, but hasn't exactly been up to what everybody expects out of AEW so far. So, Danny, what do you think about the fact that even, I hate to say it like this, but the AEW women were able to beat out what was SmackDown's main event?
No, I get what you're saying. No one wants to put it like that, but I mean, we've said enough about how AEW's women division is. But real quick, did they beat Roman Reigns and Lesnar, or did they tie? I thought they tied.
It was a tie, 0.23. 0.23 each.
Okay, which is still phenomenal, being that
I do believe I read that the commercial break in the Bunny and Soho match actually was beating that part of that 5 minutes of SmackDown, but I'd have to check that. Even still, even if they tied, the commercial that's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's something else. I guess picture-in-picture works. Like I still fast forward through it even when, like, on the DVR when I'm watching, but
I'm not the only one who does that. Then I do not pay attention to the picture-in-picture.
If it's a match, idea, but
if it's a match I really want to see, I have a live zoom feature on my TV, and I'll like zoom in on the picture-in-picture part so I can ignore the commercials. Yeah, but it's got to be like a huge match. I usually just fast forward through it if I can.
Yeah, because it's it's nice, but at the end of the day, it's still wrestling during a commercial break, and that's like, that's whatever. It's always the downtime of the match anyway. But I think that's a big deal. I think that shows that Rampage there's not as much crossover as we might have thought, because otherwise I can't imagine that they would tie otherwise. I think this is a good indication that AEW has built a solid fan base of their own, and maybe NXT was bigger competition to them than SmackDown and Raw, or apparently maybe there's not that much of an overlay. And again, I think if SmackDown's on Fox, things are a little different, but still, it's a big deal. It's a big deal, especially, Roman was granted in character, so I'm not going to hold it against him. Talking a lot of smack in his interview. A lot of people have been talking smack. It's not just Roman. It's people all up and down the cards on both sides, and it's fun. I enjoy it. I don't like when people in the comment sections like get all mad about these sorts of things when it's like it's mostly in good jest and they're all just taking light jabs. Or in Roman's case, he's playing a character, and if you get mad by that, I think you're being worked a little bit there.
It worked into a shoot, brother.
Yeah.
And more power to Roman.
Awesome. Yeah, it's good that he's doing it. Because he's got a strong character. You keep it going. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, one of the best things about MJF is he's always in character when he does his interviews, and when he says things like, "Oh, I know Roman Reigns is watching AEW, and they tied with Ruby Soho, and she sucks." Like, MJF's in character when he says these things. I just think it's funny because Soho versus the Bunny, it was a fun match, but it wasn't a built-up to match. It wasn't the top 2 stars in the company having a contract sign in for a title match for a feud that everyone swears is good. And I'm lukewarm about, but I know I'm in the minority about that. But I don't know. I think it's kind of funny. But granted, I did not watch the contract sign-in, so I can't speak on the quality of it.
I actually did. I tweeted out a picture during all of that. I was watching both SmackDown and Rampage at the same time. So I turned the volume on for the contract signing, and I've actually been fairly intrigued from what I've seen by the Paul Heyman dynamic between him being with Roman now versus when he was with Brock, and Brock keeps playing on this thing where, hey, Paul's still actually working for me, Roman, and no one's really sure if it's true. And they play that up very well in the contract signing. So, James, what are your thoughts on the signing, the match, and this head-to-head tie?
In terms of the tie, I mean, it's really hard to wrap my head around. I don't know. I mean, again, we all agree we don't want to take anything away from the ladies and from AEW's women's division. We've already commented on how it's been handled, but I don't know if this is a sign that people are just tired of the Roman and Brock story, which, Danny is a part of that group, understandably, or if people would rather watch a match than watch a contract signing and more talking. I will say for the contract signing, I've always believed Brock is a funny promo. I've always believed Brock is good on the mic. He just never has the chance to be. And we're just so used to Paul doing the work for him. But when Brock does get on the mic, he there is gold there. So I think he's been playing this pretty beautifully, and Roman is bouncing off of it as well as you could hope for. So I think the segment was good. The match was fun on Rampage too. So I care, like right now I'm going to say I care less about the ratings, and I'm happy that we're seeing good stuff on both shows. I am surprised, but still, like, it's good on both shows.
I'd like to just real quick, I think I'd be more into the Roman Brock stuff if this was a different time of year instead of Saudi Arabia pay-per-view,
I completely agree. I have never watched, I take that back. I watched one Saudi show, and then I definitely educated myself more on all of the tense dealings that we've had to see from those shows. And I will predict, I will find out the results. If there's a clip posted on social media, I will watch it, but I'm not going to turn on the network, or I'm not going to turn on the cock for one of their shows now.
I'm sorry, James, are you saying that you were not completely educated on a subject and then you learned more about it and changed your mind
I am an enigma. What could I tell you?
That's insane. Who does that?
I think you get sent to prison for that now. One more thing on the AEW women before we move on. I know we've been kind of dancing around this, but I think the best way to put it is, despite the division, it's still a mid-card match up against SmackDown's main event. So,
yeah,
in terms of it, just looking at it that way, SmackDown should be winning this head-to-head, at least that portion. But it didn't happen. So, hey, more power to AEW. I'm loving it. I mean, obviously, I am an AEW guy, but, well, you know.
Also, just a quick note, just to not just talk about the women, to belittle SmackDown. It's nice that Ruby is doing something, even though she's not going after the title at the moment. I'm glad she's not just, oh, you lost your title match and now you're not on TV anymore. It's nice that she still has a feud and something to do.
And speaking to that, it's interesting because I believe both women are going to be in the TBS title tournament. So I know that tournament isn't really going to get started until we're closer to the switch over to TBS. But it's interesting that we're seeing these matches now and then presumably again in the tournament. Maybe. I mean, maybe Ruby and the Bunny stay far. They're in different sides of the bracket and they never get near each other. But it is interesting that we're seeing the contestants or combatants go against each other before the tournament starts. You don't usually see that.
Yeah. They're definitely building up to it too, because Ruby jumped Penelope Ford on Saturday after she got her shit kicked in after the match on Friday. So that's definitely a build that I'm looking forward to, and that's a tournament I'm looking forward to. But let's move along here to the other big portion of this whole thing on Friday, which was AEW's buy-in on YouTube. Obviously headlined by Minoru Suzuki against Bryan Danielson. We will get to that in a second. I did just want to say that the last time I looked, that video on YouTube is now up over 1 million views.
Wow.
Which I think obviously a lot of it has to do with the promotion of said Suzuki versus Danielson match. Yes. So let's get to that match. That match was amazing. That was some old school strong style shit. I thought Danielson died a couple of times. I can't even put into words how much I love that match. James, you have anything? Because I'm still, even, was it 5 days later, 6 days later, I'm still reeling.
I mean, it's on record. Danielson is probably my favorite wrestler, or at the very least, he's in the top 3. Suzuki is a legend. And I know not as many people are familiar with New Japan, but he is a legend in Japan, guys. He has a long, storied career, and he's everyone's favorite murder grandpa. There's a reason that this man, who is up there in age, is still generating so much excitement in these American fans who have never had the opportunity to see him live. So this match going into it had incredible hype, and it's rare that you get a match like that with so much hype deliver in such a big way. I wasn't expecting a long match. I was expecting a quick, hard-hitting match, similar to what Moxley had with him in Suzuki's debut in AEW, where it was just going to maybe go like 10 minutes and that'd be it. But both men decided they were going to fuck each other up, and my God, were we lucky to see it. There was so much psychology. It was so hard hitting. There were very few pin attempts. These were just two strikers, two technically sound strikers, beating the crap out of each other until they knew that their opponent was going down. And I couldn't have asked for a better match. People are calling it a match of the year candidate. I'd be hard pressed to argue them. And I think Bryan needed to win, and he looked good in that win. I would love for Suzuki to get at least one win in AEW, but it wasn't supposed to be this match. But wow, my chest hurt, my head hurt. I wanted to tap out on the screen just watching these guys, but wow, it was so good.
I think another important aspect of that match was also the mat wrestling. There was a very good amount of submission wrestling in that match. This was also very, very enjoyable too. Like, I can't think of a single thing that went wrong in that match. I have no criticisms. These guys were literally trying to kill each other. Now, Danny, I know you're recently getting into New Japan, so as you begin to experience these guys and Suzuki especially, how do you feel about this style of a match here in America, and how do you feel about the match in general?
Oh man, so the match in general was phenomenal. It just had that big fight feel to it immediately. From the second the bell rang, the crowd was electric, and I don't want to overuse that word, but like they never stopped. Like there was always either just loud cheers or just rumblings in the crowd. It never got to a complete silence, except for when chests were about to be slapped, so you can hear those slaps. But this, I mean, Brian has had two already best matches of the year in what, 4 matches, one of those 4 being a tag match, so it's hard to really count that. You could just tell he was having the time of his life out there, and he wanted this. And even though it was a surprise because it was very last minute, considering the buy-in was kind of also a response to all of the overrun on SmackDown and all this not all this nonsense going on. So for a match that was unplanned, last minute, almost could have easily flew under the radar, it delivered in every way and then some. And I was talking to one of my friends about this, who he just watches AEW. So like when Suzuki came in, he didn't get it. And like, not that I was like, oh, like you got it, this guy's unbelievable. I know Suzuki and I understand why he's a big deal, but I haven't seen too much of his stuff. So, you see the Moxley match and you're kind of disappointed. Like, it's, and that's not their fault that they got a lot of time cut off their match. And they're like, okay, like that's not that good, but okay. Then they have the street fight that, we were lucky enough to be at. So like, okay, I kind of get this guy now. It makes sense. Like now, if you didn't get Suzuki before, you get Suzuki. You understand now. You get it. There was so many just beautiful moments in this match. And Brian really stood up to him and took a lot of those stiff shots, a lot of those stiff chops. His selling, his like getting knocked out selling was so good during this match. He really made me buy into it. But yeah, just a great match. Really, if you didn't get why Suzuki was a big deal before, you get it now.
Yeah. I think that's the other thing, Danny, to agree with you, that I took from this match. Both these guys look like they were having so much fun in there. I mean, Suzuki was laughing half the time, and I know that's part of his character, and I'm sure Brian was playing off of that too, laughing himself. But I genuinely think they were trying to hold back their legitimate laughter because of how much fun they were having in the ring.
I mean, one of the fun things about this match is it's not the first time that these two have crossed paths. They've had one singles match before when Brian was 23. Yeah. And it was a big deal for a young Brian to be going against Suzuki, and he definitely earned his stripes in Japan. One of my favorite things, though, that I'm seeing from Brian, and this match was a part of it, I don't know for sure, but I don't think he's ever ended a match the same way so far in AEW.
Yeah, so far, yeah.
He got this match saw him pin Suzuki, which I loved. I didn't want to see Suzuki tap, and he brought out the knee again, and that's one win with the knee. He beat Nick Jackson with cattle mutilation. And moving forward with what happened on Dynamite, Brian, spoiler guys, Brian wins again, but with a different submission with the heel hook. So this was something that was big for the American Dragon, Bryan Danielson, in Ring of Honor. So to see this aspect of him coming out in AEW, I'm loving that. And I'm going to steal something from Reddit here. Sorry. But somebody described what we're seeing from Bryan now in AEW as almost like the perfect fusion of what was Ring of Honor Bryan and WWE Bryan, where this is probably Bryan at his absolute best. And he got all the character work from WWE. He brought that over here, and all of his hard-hitting indie style wrestling he's bringing from Ring of Honor too. And oh my God, how can we just not be in awe of a guy who has been AEW's Wrestler of the Week on social media twice?
And like I love that you mentioned how he's winning all these matches differently, but also just to quickly touch on him bringing his character work from WWE. I think not only has he done that, he's brought the character work that they said no to, like the character work he wanted to do, and they were like, no, we're not going to do that. Like, he learned so much there to the point where, you know, he was probably getting all these ideas turned down and all these things he wanted to do. So now he's getting to do all these things, and you can tell like he is enjoying it. He's like, the swagger he walks out with is so different. Like he's walking out like, hey, I know I'm the best, and I know I'm gonna deliver, and I know you guys are gonna love this. But I do hope he continues to win. He hasn't won with the belt lock yet, and that's so interesting. Who knows when that's gonna happen? I remember when he first came out of retirement, he beat, I think, Big Cass like with the heel hook, and I was like, okay, he's trying to mix it up, and you know, he could get away with that when he's facing, he's having a mid-card feud, but once he started having more main event feuds again, he had to go right back to using the established finishers. And I think that's one thing I've always liked about AEW is that people win with different moves. I mean, how many different moves have we seen the Young Bucks win with? I've seen Hangman win with the Deadeye, with the Buckshot Lariat. Like, I like when people have multiple moves they can go to. So then you can do false finishes that don't always get cheapened, because the more you kick out of a finisher, the cheaper it gets each time. But if you have several moves you can end the match with, you can protect the other moves by switching that up. And I think that's just great, and I can't wait to see where that goes.
Yeah, I always like that too. Instead of just having a signature and a finisher, make it so that you can mix it up, and they're both finishers, but they won't always necessarily pin somebody unless, like you said, you really, really want to protect one of those specific moves, and that's something that's only broken out occasionally.
How great would it be to see Sami Zayn pin somebody with the Blue Thunder Bomb?
Oh my God, that'd be amazing.
He did it, I think, twice. I think he pinned AJ with it, and I think he pinned Kofi with it. And granted, that's 2 more wins than I ever thought he would get with it. But like, just like, how great would that be if that was like his other finisher?
It is one of my favorite running bits, though, that he always thinks he wins with it, and then he almost never does.
Or how nice would it be if Baron Corbin won with the freaking Deep Six? Like, it's like the coolest move on the weirdest guy.
I think
WWE wins with it.
I think WWE has like 2 guys that you could say, you know what, they could win multiple ways. AJ Styles, because he could get you with the Styles Clash, or the phenomenal forearm, or the calf crusher, but that's about it. I mean, that 3 is still good.
He hit a couple. Yeah. I think he pinned a couple people with the 450 splash too.
Yeah. So AJ's one guy. Roman could get you now with either the guillotine or I guess the spear. But yeah, it's not something you really see.
Also, I think Corbin's won a couple of matches with the Deep Six, but it's usually
he's probably won a few. Yeah.
Yeah, it's usually against weaker opponents.
Does it count if you pin Dolph Ziggler with it? Like, I mean, come on.
Yeah, I kind of like Dolph, so I'm gonna say yes.
I love Dolph. I love Dolph. I was there when Dolph cashed in the Money in the Bank, but like,
that's awesome.
Yeah, one of the biggest pops ever. But it's Dolph. Like, you expect Dolph to get pinned.
I think that might be 2 weeks in a row we've mentioned that match on this show. I want to say one more thing about the Suzuki Bryan match before we move on. That crowd in Miami, to your point, Danny, was amazing. They were so good, and they kept that energy that whole weekend. I very much enjoyed the C chants, despite the fact they used to kind of belong to somebody else. But it's Miami, you know.
Whoa! No! That is I loved him too, but it did make me think of the time where they tried to steal the yes chant and just turn it Spanish to give it to Del Rio and act like it was original. I hated that. I hated that so much.
I said kinda.
First of all,
No, I'm not jumping on you. I just hated when they did that, and that
Yeah.
was like it was like a trigger where I'm like, I fucking hated that. Also, screw Del Rio, but anyway.
yeah, I was gonna
Here
say
we go.
from here on out, let's just refer to Del Rio as redacted, and I think we'll all be okay with that.
He
You're
will slap
probably
your
right.
mustache jams.
All right. Well, how about we move on to Dynamite and other Mexican wrestlers that Danny doesn't like, because
Well, I love who we're moving on to.
Andrade El Idolo had a masked pair of luchadors on Dynamite Saturday night go up against the Lucha Brothers for the AAA Tag Team Championships. These masked luchadors were quickly outed by CM Punk on commentary to be FTR, despite the fact that they had given no hints to get. I watched it today because I wasn't able to watch it on Saturday, and just thinking back in my head, it was so funny because they hadn't given any hints. There was nothing that these guys were FTR, and Punk's just like, yeah, no, those are FTR. And Shivani's like, you sure? And Punk's like, yeah, no, they definitely are. And Shivani's like, well, he's an expert, ladies and gentlemen. I guess we have to believe him. Obviously, he was right, but he outed them so fast. There was no build or nothing.
I appreciated it so much because how often does WWE run an angle where someone's under a mask and the commentators just treat us like we're friggin' idiots? And like, we know, and like, guys, I'm gonna shock you here, but Mr. America was Hulk Hogan. I know, but but AEW, like, I know that like when I saw them, when a lot of people saw them, AEW. I'm so sorry. I'm getting mic feedback right now.
Yeah.
Same.
Okay, you know what? We're going to break, and then we're going to come back, which is going to explain this very awkward transition coming up in a minute. All right, we're back from weird technical difficulties brought to you by James. Yep, James, you were just talking about how it's kind of nice for a change that AEW isn't treating us like idiots on commentary.
It's refreshing. It's really refreshing, and I know when I saw them, I knew, like, I saw their face, like I saw it in their face almost that it was them. And I know a bunch of people online felt the same way. And why go through the charade of it? You know, just like it is what it is. And I loved it. And just moving past the reveal and how it was treated, this match had a lot going for the future of AEW's tag team division. It's been reported that Tony Khan made a deal with AAA to feature the tag titles at least semi-regularly on AEW television, and they're almost going to serve as a mid-card tag team title, which is awesome if you ask me. I'd love to see more tag teams actually get a chance to shine, and if I'm not getting my goddamn trios title, I will take a second tag title.
Yeah,
and,
I like. Oh, sorry. Good.
No, you're good. Go. What were you going to say?
I was going to say I like this too. I think it is going to give a lot of other tag teams a chance to shine because you have not just teams like FTR, but you can even take guys like the Acclaimed or Varsity Blondes and give them these tag titles so that they have a title reign under their belt and they're on TV defending and stuff, as opposed to just them kind of meddling over on Dark and Elevation.
Exactly. Go ahead, Danny.
So I would, sorry, this just popped in my head because you said the Acclaimed. I would love the Acclaimed to win the AAA titles and then show up and then rap in Spanish for their entrance. But I like the implications of this. I like what this means. I actually did not like the, I guess the gimmick of the match. It's only because it was FTR, and I get it because I love the idea of the mat-based wrestlers being, the Lucha Libre Tag Team Champions. I think that's beautiful right there, and that's great character work for them, and they're gonna knock it out of the park, and that's phenomenal. But them being dressed up in like the tight suits and the mask, and doing that, this felt like the reason they left WWE. Like this is the kind of stuff they didn't like, and I felt like I think anyone else, I don't have this problem, but it's just because they've made such a big deal out of the stupid outfits and costumes they have to wear.
So, Danny, I hate to do this, but I'm actually going to disagree with you a little bit here.
No, by all means.
FTR has shown that they are willing to do anything to win these tag titles. When they first got here, when they were going against the Bucks, who weren't tag team champs yet, but when they were going against the Bucks, they went after who was it? The Midnight Express or the Rock and Roll Express?
I think it was Midnight Express, right? Or
Midnight Express. And
whichever one's who's 80 and hitting the Canadian destroyers.
Yeah. When they went against Hangman and Kenny, they befriended Hangman. They got in his head and they turned him against the rest of the elite. They have shown that they are willing to stoop to really ridiculous levels to get gold around their waists. And this just felt like another example of that. And the psychology there, like I mentioned this before about like the future implications for AEW. Andrade made a deal with MJF for FTR. And beyond the fact that it showed that Andrade didn't actually have any friends to bring in to take them on, the Lucha Bros were expecting a Lucha team. And when you're preparing for one type of team and you have almost the exact opposite bring their A game to face you on a surprise, I love that they lost those belts that way. You know, if you're preparing for a fight and a different competitor comes your way with a completely different game, that's how you should lose. Like, I feel that protects the Lucha Bros in a way. And again, speaking to like these future implications, one, MJF sort of outed Andrade for having to pay for their services. I could see there being some resentment there. And I would love a good heel versus heel feud of these two money guys deciding who's got more sway, who's got more pull, who's the bigger boss in AEW. I think that'd be a very compelling story. And even further, MJF asked Andrade asked MJF, how does he want to pay, cash or check? And MJF said both. And he took big money there. Does that mean that he took some of FTR's money? Did he take a cut for himself from FTR? Could that lead to some dissension? I don't know, but I feel like there's a lot there that you could work with, and it's going to impact a lot of different people. And that's what AEW does so well. They juggle a lot of different storylines, and they juggle a lot of different people doing different things. I loved every aspect of this, and them wearing the masks. Yeah, I could see how it could be seen as goofy, but overall, to me felt in character for them to be willing to do whatever they need to, no matter how ridiculous, to win those belts.
And not only win the belts, get paid too. You know,
Yeah.
I know you said MJF's probably skimming a little bit off the top, but I'm sure that was part of their agreement. I think one of the bigger implications from that conversation between MJF and Andrade was MJF turned around before he went and he said, "Hey, this was just one night, right?" And Andrade was like, "Oh yeah, sure. Maybe it's not. Maybe there's something more there." Danny, what do you think about that little interaction and anything else you got for us?
No, I loved it. Like, I don't disagree with anything James said. My gripe is them in the outfits. Everything else I love. Them winning it, I love. The implications for the future, I love. Like I was saying, them being the AAA Tag Team Champions and going up against luchadors and being the mat-based wrestlers. And I think it's hilarious that they are the face of Lucha Libre Tag Team Wrestling right now, essentially. That's phenomenal. It's literally, my big gripe is just with the appearance and the presentation. The bright green, super tight, like spandex. It was kind of silly. That was the only gripe. That wasn't like it didn't ruin anything for me because I liked everything else. I liked the interactions between Andrade and MJF. I am interested to see where that goes. I don't I hope it doesn't lead to any like Pinnacle breakup anytime soon because we haven't really seen that much for them, and I would like a little more distance with that group before anything happens. But everything about it is interesting, including the interactions between MJF and Andrade. I thought that was great. I thought MJF was so funny during that. He really came off as like just like a fresh out of college, silver spoon, like preppy boy, just talking to someone way cooler than him and trying to act like he knew what he was talking about or in on the loop. Everything about it felt great, and he had that underlying insecurity in his voice, asking about the one-time thing, and like I said, everything else about it phenomenal. My only nitpick was their appearance, but I can't wait to see what happens next with this.
He had a good promo later too. In what was supposed to be that Darby match, but obviously Darby not cleared because the Pinnacle jumped him last week, where he was talking that bullshit Spanish in front of the Miami crowd, like he was talking to Andrade. Silencio. I was losing my shit. That was so funny. Well, speaking of promos, let's talk about another really, really good one. Hangman, his return promo in AEW. This might be the best promo he's ever cut. I have to say it's definitely the best promo he's ever cut in AEW. This was strong. This was powerful. I wrote in the notes, this is Hangman's cowboy shit promo. Things go well. This could be talked about consistently, like something like Austin 316. I really thought that highly of it. Danny, are you on the same page as me? Did you like it as much as I did, or are you not there yet?
I mean, I guess I didn't like it as much as you did, but I still really liked it. I just
I kind of oversold it there a little bit, but I don't know. I really do think it could go that far.
I don't think you oversold it.
I think it'll definitely be played in future video and hype packages for Hangman going forward. It was great, and you know what? Yeah, I don't think you oversold it, because I think it's a good indication that Hangman is comfortable out there. He's comfortable with this, because he's not like, it's easy. It's not easy, but it's easy for someone like MJF to go out there and cut one of his amazing promos, because he has a character that he's so easy for him, comes so second nature, and all he has to do is go out there and be a dick. And let's be real, it's easier to be a dick than it is to be nice and be vulnerable. And like, Hangman's the only person in wrestling right now who has to be vulnerable on screen. He's a baby face, he has to be confident, but he's also vulnerable, because he's been telling a really complex story, a complex story for wrestling, especially over the past 2 years. And there's so much that goes into that. So for him to be out there and cut this promo, if it's anyone else, it's just an okay promo, because there's so much implication behind this promo. There's so much detail behind it. There's so much story behind it that we feel rewarded for knowing, that we feel proud of him for coming out there and cutting this promo. And I think it was a great indication that he has the crowd in the palm of his hands, and he is on his way to the very top. And I think it was one of those kinds of promos that, yeah, we will remember, and maybe it won't go down as an all-time great promo, but it's important. And I think it's one of the most important promos in AEW so far. And, it's like anything else. It has its criticism. Esteemed, well-noted, award-winning indie film director Eric Gisante isn't sure whether Hangman Page is the guy, to be the face of the company and carry the championship and be that guy. And I think this promo was almost directly addressing Eric. I'm sure Hangman caught wind of his comments and decided to address it in his promo.
Yeah, I think to your point, Danny, Hangman is playing, he's the anxious millennial cowboy. He's playing such an insecure person. It's a true testament to his acting skills. I think Hangman, you can even go back and look at some of his videos on some old BTEs, especially the ones where he was out living in the woods. He can really get into character and go into some like really deep personal things when he's talking. And I don't really see too many people who can act at that level in wrestling, going that deep into themselves to bring out this character. James, you were agreeing with me that you really think it is that good. So what are your thoughts?
I think this is one of AEW's best promos. I think it's right up there with Cody's Undeniable promo.
Silver Spoon Undeniable, yeah.
Yeah. And it's Danny, you did make a great point. I think this promo hits even better just because we are so invested in Hangman and we are so invested in his journey and we've seen his journey and how far he's come. But the truth is that vulnerability that you talked about on its own makes it a good promo. He acknowledged, I lost. I lost to Jericho. I lost to Pac. I lost friends. I lost myself. And it, I am in no way comparing it to the same greatness or the same relevance of Dusty's Hard Times promo. But that's the vibe I got. I got the vibe of I'm fighting. I am going to fight to prove myself. I am going to fight for everyone who's believed in me. And it like it gave me goosebumps. Like I know I know it sounds cheesy, I know it sounds corny, but I legit got goosebumps with that promo because this is the hero. He's the hero of AEW right now, and he's the guy that we're all putting our hopes in to sort of quote unquote save us from the elite, to save the world championship, and honestly to save himself. I agree. Like, are there better promos out there? For sure. Are there better promo guys in AEW? Yes. But for what that promo was, oh man, it was to me a 5-star promo. It was a 5-star promo because of the emotion behind it.
So, I mean, you guys are really convincing me on the spot to just be right there with you about it being an all-time great. And I think it is. Like I said, I think it'll be used in video packages from here on out. But I think it's just, I'm trying to think, and maybe you guys can think of someone, but I don't really think there is. Like, is there a character in wrestling that there's so much hidden details, so much subtle storytelling, so many implications that aren't flat out said? Like, let's not forget, like, this story isn't just about a typical wrestling story of an underdog who lost a couple of times and now has to overcome. Like, dude also dealing with an alcohol problem. That's, we've seen it, a few times in wrestling, but it's usually turned up to a exaggerated extreme, like Chris Jericho smashing a whiskey bottle over CM Punk's head kind of thing, and not a subtle thing, and not a he always has a drink in his hand in the backstage promos. He's always drinking a lot on BTE. Like, it's so complex, and it's like it almost feels like it's not wrestling, and it's one of the rare cases where, again, not to bash or compare, but any other time I think we get that drilled over our head, like that. Oh, look at this! Hangman's drinking. The announcers acknowledge it, but they don't overstate it. They don't constantly drive it home. It is not their story to tell because they almost feel uncomfortable telling it because it's a real issue. It's not a kayfabe issue. It's not a thing you make light of. So they walk on eggshells around it because they're not sure the best way to approach it, because you don't want to just bash them for it. You don't want to make it seem like it's no big deal. How do you handle it? And I think they do such a good job of, and I think that's why this promo works, because like I said, anyone else cuts this promo, it's just good or fine. Or like, and again, who can cut this promo in their character? What character works this way? MJF can cut the best heel promo, have us booing the shit out of him, chanting shut the fuck up, or laughing at him. But I don't think he could do this. Like, Cody Kim, his promo was the only one that's been comparable so far. But even then, that didn't have major implications behind it or any consequences following it, where this promo will. Like, what happens next matters, and this promo does affect that. So yeah, I think you guys have really talked me into it. Where it's this, I think it is. Maybe it won't be the best promo in AEW, but it's so far, without a doubt, the most important one.
Let me know if you agree with this, Danny. I think the only other character, because you were asking who else is so complex, might be Kenny. I mean, we talked about this a few episodes back for a good 5-10 minutes. Like, Kenny is also a very complex character. And granted, I think there's a lot more history there because he's been wrestling longer. But he's another guy where not everything needs to be said, and we know what's coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, I would say Kenny's comparable, but I don't think he's anywhere near as complex. Just not because he's not capable, but just because a lot of his character traits and the character beats they go for aren't too out there for wrestling. They're not. They're pretty common as far as like wrestling characteristics go. Whereas Hangman's are a little more nuanced. James?
I will say that in this instance, I do agree with you, Danny, but I think Nick does bring up a good point. I've been following Kenny for a very long time, and
Oh, yeah, if you want to use like Golden Lovers stuff and all that,
yeah,
that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
The Golden Lovers storyline, which is years long, and my God, people, if you don't know it, there are so many YouTube videos that you should be watching.
Go back and watch ours from a couple episodes ago and watch James run it all down for you.
And then even Kenny's storyline with Okada. And that's the beauty. Like, I don't want to maybe give away how this is going to play out, but the beauty of this storyline with Kenny and Hangman is very similar to the beauty of what was the Kofi Mania story with Kofi and, at the time, Daniel Bryan, where Kofi was sort of inhabiting the role that Daniel Bryan was once in years prior. Here, Hangman is actually finding himself in the position Kenny was once in when he was challenging Kazuchika Okada for the IWGP championship. Kenny was this young, hot upstart, or even if he wasn't the upstart, he was definitely the rising talent who was challenging who was quite possibly the best in the world at the time. And I mean, some people will still say Okada's the best in the world, but Kenny had multiple failures along the way to becoming champion. And he had multiple losses, multiple setbacks, personal and in the ring, before he was able to get it all together and emotionally be ready for the champion that was Okada. And here we're seeing that again with Hangman, where Hangman needs to get his life together before he's ready to take on the champion that is Kenny Omega. And I think it goes to what we've said in the past, how protected within the elite Hangman has been, how much they value Hangman to be giving him this storyline. And granted, he's knocked it out of the park. He is that damn good, and he's showing that he deserves it every week. But this was a team effort from all around AEW. Top brass, the elite, everyone along the way has done a perfect job of helping Hangman feel like the chosen one of AEW.
So, yeah, and that really that's a very well put. And it kind of made me think about a comparison outside of kayfabe and outside of the storytelling. I don't want to throw shade because he's doing good character work right now, but, Hangman is a great example of how WWE could have booked Roman to get him over as a face, because Hangman was supposed to be this big face, possibly first champion. Looked like that was definitely going to be the plan. And it didn't work. Not that people didn't like Hangman. People were just like, is this the guy? Is this the top guy, the champion? I was one of those people because I didn't know all the previous history. I only caught a little bit of it stuff on BTE as I was getting ready to watch Dynamite. And then over these past 2 years, there's a point where I'm like, yeah, Hangman is going to be the top guy. It's undeniable now. And I think it's a good way of, they realize what was going on. You're like, oh, this is the guy we want, but he's not quite there yet. We got to do a slow burn. And they reevaluated the situation, and the story turned out even better. And a lot of that is also because of stuff that was out of their control. Like, Brody Lee, like that played a huge part in this. The Dark Order was, I don't think, ever part of the original plans of this, and they became a pivotal part of this, to the point where, we're all still waiting. Hangman and the Dark Order haven't interacted on TV yet. We're still waiting for that moment, and it's just again one of those things that makes you trust AEW and like show that we're listening. They pulled back on Hangman a little bit, went at it from a different angle, and ultimately still hit the story beats they wanted to hit. And probably the story ended up better off because of that.
And to go to your point, Danny, I was a Hangman fan prior to AEW. And I'm not going to say I was one of the few, the proud. There, he had his fans and he had his guy. He had people supporting him, but he was never seen the way the Elite saw him. The Elite had gone on record, saying he's going to be the future. We believe in him. He's the best of us. And while I liked him, even I who liked him didn't think, oh yeah, he's the best. He's the best over Kenny Omega. He's the best over the Bucks or Cody or at the time Marty. Nobody really bought it. And when he was going for the title to be the inaugural champion, even I was like, really? And it's not a knock on Hangman. It's just he hadn't had the opportunity to show what he could be.
It felt too soon.
Exactly. And it made, as much as I didn't want Jericho to beat him, it felt like, well, yeah, of course Jericho's going to win because it's Chris Jericho, and what has Hangman done? And thank God Jericho won, because I don't think we would have gotten to this point otherwise.
Yeah.
I don't think Hangman is as important to wrestling and to AEW if he's the inaugural champion.
Absolutely. 100% agree. I think, honestly, that could have been a really pivotal, like AEW could have not tanked, but things could have ended up a lot differently if they got off to that rough start. But yeah, I'm glad things turned out the way they did, and we are where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
One more point on Hangman before we move on, because I've been sitting here thinking as I've been listening to you guys. And we've mentioned Dusty and Stone Cold, and I've just been thinking about, the top baby faces of their generations and how they tend to match up with what their generation is. Dusty was the son of a plumber. You can even look at a guy like Hulk Hogan. He was, not to make a joke, but he was, Mr. America, eat your vitamins in the 80s and stuff. And that's how America was. And you look at Stone Cold in the 90s, and, he was smash mouth in your face, fuck authority, fuck my, I'm going to beat the shit out of my boss, beer drinking guy, which is what, the late 90s were. And now you look at Hangman, and Hangman is just the embodiment of, millennials. We're anxious, we're insecure, we're constantly needing to prove ourselves, not just everybody else, but to ourselves. And that's the character Hangman is. And that's why so many people are behind him, because we are a generation of people who have, had struggles and, fail, whether mentally, usually, a lot of the times. And some of us, turtle or turn to a bottle like Hangman, or some of us seek help from friends and family. And that's what Hangman is doing. And he's finally coming out of this, funk and proving to himself that, hey, I could be a champion, but even if I'm not, I'm okay with that, and I'm okay with who I am.
That is beautiful, man. Well, that was a great point, man. So well, but
made me hate myself for being a millennial. But hey, what's more millennial than hating yourself?
Hey,
yeah,
and
I think that's the point.
A millennial who watched Stone Cold Steve Austin drinking beer all the time, thought it was cool, followed the trend. Now he's depressed. Also, you skipped over John Cena there. Are you saying that the noughties had, or the 2000s had, no identifying factors? Because I kind of agree with that.
I was just thinking of the three biggest examples I could think of, and I just threw Hogan in there because I thought of Reagan. All right,
you can't see it. That's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, let's move on to some of Hangman's friends, because the Dark Order, who we mentioned before, they had a pretty good match against, I thought a really good match against the Super Click, which has been kind of running parallel to Hangman's story, where they have been discussing that, hey, we haven't really spoken to Hangman for a while, but we still got his back. And in doing so, we're going to have to take on the Elite, and in this case, the Super Click. This match was a lot of fun. There was some really funny spots. It was Silver and Reynolds did the Adam Cole kiss, which was great. Evil Uno took off Nick Jackson's shoe, which amazing Nick Jackson can wrestle with only one shoe on, but B, he then took off Nick Jackson's sock and did a Socko mandible claw to him. I had so much fun watching this match, James.
I'm right there with you. I I love comedy in wrestling when it's done well. And we've seen some very good comedy in wrestling in the past, and we've seen some very bad comedy wrestling in the past. I think this was comedy executed well, and I think it shows how well these guys work together. You got to remember, the Dark Order might be new to a lot of audiences, but they've been wrestling on the indies for a very long time. They knew the Bucks before AEW. They knew the Bucks way back on the indies, and I think their chemistry really, really shines bright here. And I agree. I loved the Mr. Sacco mandible claw. I loved the one shoe bit. I loved, as a recipient in the past of a super kiss party, I love that bit in general, but to see it played with such a funny twist here was great. And yeah, to see these storylines, I said it before, AEW does a great job of juggling storylines and then bringing them together, and it's inevitable that they're going to come back together. You know, I'm loving it. And we can't forget that Jurassic Express is going to be somewhere in the wings too. They got taken out by the Elite in a backstage segment, but you know they're going to be back, and that's going to bring Christian back. And I'm sure somewhere lurking in the shadows is the Elite Hunter, Frankie Kazarian, where poor Brandon Cutler will have to deal with him. But who also, guys, let's just a moment for Brandon Cutler, who is just killing it. But
also,
yeah,
also a moment of silence for getting the shit kicked out of him after that match by Jungle Boy.
But it's exciting again. It's not that anything with Kenny and the Elite hasn't been exciting, or with Cole, but you could just feel things are coming to a head. And even though it really does feel like we're hitting a climax in this story, we're hitting a peak, we don't know that Hangman's going to win. We don't know if the Dark Order is going to win gold. We don't know how everything comes together. And man, that mystery is great, because it doesn't feel like we're not getting what we want. It just feels like we're watching a good story unfold.
Yeah, there's not much to say about this match because it was just a great, fun match. I do agree. I love that there's so many stories going on at once. The Elite has so much going on. They got the Hangman stuff. Now they got the Dark Order stuff. And even though it's related, they're separate for now. They're going to come together. But for now, they're still separate. Then you have Jurassic Express in there. You got Bryan Danielson in the wings. Like, he's not done with Kenny yet. There's so much going on. And, you know, I forgot to mention that about the MJF stuff, where like he's feuding with Darby, but now he's interacting with Andrade, and there's multiple places spinning, and that's always exciting. Yeah, it was just really fun. I love the super kiss spot, especially, I don't know if you guys have been watching Being the Elite, but all of Adam Cole's interactions with Sylvain Reynolds are just phenomenal.
I don't know how much more shit John can eat. He might get sick. He might really get sick, guys. It's a big deal.
He got sick the first time, and yeah, Alex was trying to keep him from doing it again, but we'll see.
It's better than drinking the pee-pee.
Yeah.
Is it? I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't think you can say that definitively.
Just okay. Let's move on. All right, a few more notes here from Dynamite before we get on to some other things. Dante Martin started off this night against Malachi Black. I thought it was a fun match. It was pretty quick, but I just wanted to make a really cool note. At the end of it, Malachi Black gave Dante Martin the head nod, which I really loved, because I think they're really going to push this kid, and I hope his brother comes back soon. And he finally got mentioned. Thank you, CM Punk. So interested to see where he goes, especially now that he's teaming with Leo Rush. So I'm curious to see what happens with that. And then we also had the announcement of the Eliminator Tournament for the AEW Championship. Excuse me while I read these down for everybody. One side of the bracket is Preston Vance, number 10 of the Dark Order, against John Moxley, which I have to imagine is going to be an absolute slobber knocker. Orange Cassidy against Powerhouse Hobbs, which brings back a nice little feud with Team Taz and the Best Friends. Justin Rhodes against Bryan Danielson. That, I think, is going to be a lot of fun. And Lance Archer versus Eddie Kingston. I think the thing that stands out to me the most in this is during Saturday's episode of Dynamite, Moxley fought Wheeler Yuta and just obliterated him. And Orange Cassidy looked pretty upset. So I think we're setting up for a second round matchup there between the two of them. Danny, what stands out to you here?
A lot. I don't want to be negative, but like this tournament's not filled with credible contenders besides the obvious two who were leaked to be in the finals anyway.
Which we won't talk about.
I still don't know. I have somehow avoided these leaks, and I am going to do my best.
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to walk around it. But
I think I got more spoiled for Eternals, and that hasn't even come out yet.
Jesus.
But,
Watch those spoilers, people. They're out there.
Yeah, like I don't know. Like the matches will be good. I know they'll be good, and I am interested to see Dustin Rhodes versus Bryan Danielson. I don't know why that's happening, but I think it's going to be good. And I think a second round Kingston versus Bryan match will be phenomenal. But and this is bet. Bryan is top 3 favorite wrestlers, like point blank. Why is he in this tournament? He's won 2 matches. He should not be eligible for this tournament. So, is it 3? Isn't he have the
2 or 3? It's 3.
He's won 3 singles. He's won 3 singles.
3 singles, yeah.
And he had the tie with Kenny, which in itself I think is a good argument for him being in the tournament. Like in kayfabe, I could see that being an argument. And
I don't know. I feel like even the way Christian, at least Christian, won matches over like a 5-month, 6-month span to get a tie. I don't know. I don't like that he's in it, honestly. And it's weird because I want to see Omega versus Danielson again, but I don't want it to be for the title. And if Hangman wins the title, I don't want either of those guys to fight each other yet because I don't want either one of them to lose that match yet. It just doesn't feel right. But the matches will be good. I'll enjoy them. I don't know. I think the bracket should be a little more stacked. Especially again, this is a problem with has 10 won a match on Dynamite? Is that
not a singles match. Not a singles match.
Yeah.
He's won tag matches on Dynamite, but I don't think he's won a singles match.
Hobbs, his last match on TV was a loss to Punk, which is, great for him. But, Rhodes hasn't been on it and hasn't wrestled a match since the Malachi Black match, where he, for some reason, really took Malachi to the limits there. But I don't know. It feels weird. Archer feels like he should belong, but he's also eaten a lot of losses on TV, over the past couple months.
I mean, he beat Moxley in a one-on-one match. He won the title. He won the U.S. title, the IWGP U.S. title from Moxley, and that was an AEW sanctioned match, even though it was for a New Japan title. So I get what you're saying. Archer definitely loses more of the big ones than he wins, but I see how it's there.
Yeah,
he's still super credible.
He feels like he kind of belongs. It's a little he's just not someone I buy right now. And that's because of how they book him. It's not on him. He's great, but yeah, I'll enjoy the matches. So I guess I'll be a hypocrite in those moments. But I feel this is a weak bracket. I feel like it could have been way more stacked.
So I do agree on that. But it does remind me of last year's bracket, which I don't know if a lot of people remember. Last year's tournament.
I just remember Kenny and Sonny Kiss and
exactly.
And
admittedly, Sonny Kiss was a replacement for his then partner Joey Janela. But even nothing against Joey, but what was Joey doing in that tournament?
Yeah.
So I think. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I always feel like they tend to have a good balance of upper guys and then a couple of mid carders to get some TV time and some rookies.
Yeah.
I always like that balance.
Oh, I love the balance of it, but I do agree with Danny. It's what is someone like Dustin, who we all love? We all love Dustin. We know Dustin can still go. But the last time we saw him in a singles match on Dynamite, he lost to Malachi Black. Why is Malachi Black not in this tournament? From a ranking standpoint, it is a good question. But I'm sure if we really look at these guys' rankings and their win-loss records, which going back to Danny's excellent point about needing wins on Dynamite, it's It's something that needs to be analyzed a little bit more. But I do think in the end, this is going to come down to two men. And I think the bigger story here, beyond who's just going to win, which in itself is big, I think we're going to see moving forward some turns, some either heel turns, some face turns, not just within the tournament. We talked about it prior, but I think the landscape of AEW's main event and the players involved, we're going to see a little bit of a shakeup.
Yeah, if there's a big upset in this tournament, I'll take back everything I said. And if it ends up being Kingston and Moxley in the finals, I'll take back everything I said. Like they have to do something to like spice this up because this feels like way too cut and dry.
My big pick here is I think Moxley is going to win. And I think it's going to be Moxley versus Hangman for the title. That's my prediction. That's my, out there prediction, but we'll see.
That means Brian has to take a loss already. And that's why I don't like him being in this tournament.
But if Brian loses to John Moxley, it's not that big a loss.
James, you think Moxley's turning heel, don't you? Because I think Moxley's turning heel. So even if he doesn't, because I think he could easily just occupy the space as a tweener who leans towards heel tendencies, because he kind of already does that anyway. But do you think it's Moxley, or do you have somebody else?
I think they've been teasing Moxley turning heel for a while. His stuff with New Japan, excluding the Suzuki stuff, because I think that was more of like a personal wish list thing for the guys involved. I think Moxley has been leaning towards that heel turn for a long time, and I think it's necessary. We all value that Moxley came in as the first real WWE defector, but we also got to acknowledge Moxley's been there since day one. He won the world title relatively quickly, and it's time for him to sort of reach a new story. And him turning heel makes sense. We know he's a great heel. We've seen it before. Other than getting injections in the ass, he is a good heel. So I think it's necessary for his growth. It's going to make it easier for him to beat Brian, because if Brian loses to a newly turned heel Moxley, okay, we're getting Brian's first loss out of the way to a main eventer who needs desperately to not be overshadowed by all these new signings. We love Moxley, but it's easy for him to get overshadowed by a Bryan Danielson or a CM Punk or even an Adam Cole. So shaking him up is, I think, essential. And a heel Moxley versus a babyface Hangman, I want to see that story.
I mean, Moxley was getting booed in. Sorry, Danny. Moxley was getting booed in the ladder match when Hangman came out and he was fighting him. And honestly, like heel Moxley against a face Bryan, Moxley's getting some serious heat, especially if he beats Bryan for the first time.
And I also want to see, like, I hope this doesn't lead to the end of Moxley and Kingston. And I would love to see Kingston turn heel again. I think it was essential to turn him face to align him with Moxley in the first place. But I think we could all agree Eddie works better as a heel. As much as we love him, his character, sometimes you just want to smack him.
Well, he's from Yonkers, so. And I just lost like half our audience. No, I'm kidding. What's up, Danny? You were saying, going to say something?
They can take it. All right. If they can't take a little dig at Yonkers, well, then maybe they're living in the right place. But I agree that if Moxley has to turn heel, I think he's done everything he can at this point. So I don't have an issue with that at all. I just still have an issue with beating Bryan. I don't think Moxley, even as a heel, is the guy to do it. It's not that it's really that bad. I can buy it, but and again, it just feels kind of like a waste. Like I was saying with the whole like Becky getting her first loss in over 3 years in a singles match, like give it to someone who needs it more. And to me, Moxley isn't that guy that needs it right now. But I do want to see the end result that James is talking about of Hangman versus a heel Moxley. Like I'm all on board for that. I'm all on board for the Moxley heel turn. I just think it's not I don't want to say a waste, but it's almost a waste to use Bryan's first loss on Moxley when you could use it. Again, that's just where MJF is that guy, but like use it on like an MJF, you can use it on someone else. But like again, it's one of those things where it's like the one part of it I have a problem with. The rest of it's all fantastic. The Moxley heel turn sounds great. Eddie turning heel with them sounds great. I'd love if they do a little story where he's reluctant at first, but then he ends up just turning heel in the end. It's that all sounds good to me. I would prefer Malachi Black just because I know James said it earlier. If they do a double set, I'd rather him just be more like Britt, where like he's just really over. He's still technically a heel, but it's barely. It's only by like a technicality, and we all love him because him as a face seems weird. I'd rather him almost even like a Moxley too, where he's just kind of a tweener, where Moxley was fighting face Kenny Omega, but was over as hell. So.
Do you not think that a newly minted heel Jon Moxley would not? Do you think he wouldn't need that win over Bryan? I think like that would really establish him as a full blown heel. Like he doesn't need it in terms of like getting over, but I think in terms of like cementing himself as a heel, I think he would not need it, but I think it would go a long way.
Yeah, I'm not saying it wouldn't go a long way. I just wouldn't do it. I don't know. He doesn't feel like the guy to give Bryan his first loss. But like they can do it. Like I'm sure it'll be good, and I'll warm up to it like when it happens, if it happens. It's one of the things I wouldn't do. I don't think we really I don't think Moxley needs that. I think everyone buys Moxley and takes him seriously. He doesn't need this like huge feather in his cap for anyone to take him seriously at this point. I think he's well enough established.
Just one last point I'd like to make, because I was thinking about it as Danny was speaking, because I think he did make a good argument. We always talk about the fact that wins and losses matter. But I think sometimes we focus on the winning aspect of that. Like, oh, these guys need to win before they get pushed, or these guys need to win so they're protected. But I think losses are important too, in the aspect, not every first loss should be against the champion. Not every first loss, in my opinion, should be super delayed. Because if you build it to a point as who's going to be the first guy to beat Bryan, or anybody, Punk or whatever, it made you sort of build yourself into a corner of, well, okay, he's beating all these guys. This is the guy. There's only a few people left who could do it, or that would make sense to do it. And you mentioned MJF as somebody. It's like, yeah, I could totally see MJF beating Bryan and getting a massive rub from that. But at this point, can we hate MJF anymore? You know, I mean, I can, because it's fun, but I'm always weary of winning streaks because they can only go for so long, and not everyone's going to be the Brock Lesnar to somebody's Undertaker. So sometimes it's almost nice to get that first loss out of the way. Technically, Bryan already has his first loss because of that tag match. So I understand the argument, and now I'm not as confident about it as, Moxley turning heel and beating him. But I do think, if it does happen, it's not going to hurt Bryan all that much.
Yeah, I can see that. I don't know. Something about it I kind of just don't want it to be Moxley. Like, I love Moxley, so it's not like personal. It just, I don't know. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like the right time. Like he can lose literally like next month, and I'd be like, yeah, sure. Like, because like you said, sometimes it is better to get these things out of the way, do them sooner. So I'm not against that, especially when you have Cole, you have Punk, you have Bryan, you have Malachi Black. You have all these people that right now, like, you don't want to feed losses to. Like, one of them has to lose soon. I mean, it's probably going to be Malachi Black to Cody, but, I'm going to pretend that's not going to happen.
Well, I think we've strayed a little bit here from the tournament. So how about we move on to some other tournaments and some other companies? King of the Ring finals and the Queen's Crown finals are set over at WWE. The King of the Ring finals will start there Finn Balor, who defeated Sami Zayn, will be going up against Xavier Woods, who defeated Jinder Mahal. James, you got one of these wrong, and you said you were willing to call yourself out on it. So have at it, kid.
I love being proven wrong when it comes to wrestling. And this was an example of me being proven wrong. I could have sworn, I would have bet all of King Midas's silver that Jinder versus Finn was the match. And they swerved me, and I'm happy to have been swerved. Xavier Woods deserves this. He deserves to go on to be King of the Ring. But my God, now are we in a pickle? Because do we have Finn take his second major loss since coming back to the main roster, losing to, I love Xavier, but a tag team guy? Or do we have Finn win and possibly upset people because people are really behind Xavier? And in the process, it feels weird to say this because it feels like a knock on Xavier, but how much does Finn really gain from beating the tag team guy that is Xavier Woods? I feel like no matter what, I'm going to feel a little happy and a little sad no matter where we go with this. But maybe that's what I'm supposed to feel. I don't know.
Well, I was going to say that is the conundrum with the face-face dynamic here.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about this kind of thing. I think this could be an opportunity for Finn Balor to turn heel and crush Xavier's childhood dreams and, start his supposed big push on Raw as a heel. I'm not saying I want that necessarily. I'd be okay with it. I just think it'll be a good match. It'll be fun. The crowd is not gonna care, I think, at all, because Saudi Arabia, and they probably don't know who Xavier Woods is by himself. Probably recognize the New Day as a whole. But if it's just Xavier Woods out there, they're probably gonna be on their phones or talking to each other like they weirdly do. They get up and talk to each other like they're at a dinner party at these events. It's kind of weird. So it's one of those, if this was happening at a different pay-per-view, I'd be so excited for this. This would be so compelling. It's like you were saying, James, it's like, which way do we go? Either way, you're going to feel, it's going to sting a little bit. You're going to be happy, but it's going to sting. If Xavier wins, it's this great feel-good moment. If Finn wins, it's still a good moment. And it's a good indicator that he is going to be pushed and taken seriously on Raw. Or maybe it doesn't matter because it's King of the Ring, and maybe 4 weeks from now, they stop even mentioning it. Who knows?
As you were speaking, you led me down the rabbit hole of if Finn wins and this leads to him turning heel, you've got a built-in feud with the Raw champion, Big E. Yeah. He just beat his New Day partner, and now he's going for the title because, hey, he's the king. And God. We just solved it. I think no matter what, this is coming out after this is done. So look at that. We predicted the future, or in this case, the past, because it's already happened. Are we back to the future, or are we back to the past, or are we just like moving sideways? I don't know. It's the day after tomorrow.
Yeah, something like that. I was gonna say, yeah, just be sure, get at us on, Instagram and Twitter and tell us that we were wrong if we were. I'm really looking forward to this match because obviously both of these dudes can go, and I think they have styles that are going to mesh together really well. So even though I know I'm not supposed to watch this stupid event or whatever they call it, maybe I'll just try to find this match somewhere and just watch that match. But I want to see X win, even though, because I think Finn could eat the loss. He's that over, and he could still eat the loss and go after E, because I think that's probably what he's going to end up doing at some point in the near future anyway. So, but
wow, what a WWE thing to lose a match at a pay-per-view and then go for the title at the next pay-per-view.
That's my point.
So real it hurts.
Well, yeah, wins and losses don't matter like they do in AEW, so you can lose at a pay-per-view and go straight for a title.
I mean, admittedly, you could also go the route that Xavier beats him, and then Finn snaps, turns heel, beats the shit out of Xavier, and that brings out Big E to challenge Finn.
Yeah,
You know?
he is there. He also has a match on that card. So
I think that's literally worst case scenario, because then Finn loses to the quote unquote weakest member of the New Day, and then he turns heel and beats up Xavier. So Xavier just also looks bad and doesn't get to enjoy his King of the Ring moment, kind of making it pointless. And I don't know. That's such a WWE thing that I feel like we've seen that kind of thing so many times. And to me, that's the sort of thing that flattens out everyone, and no one looks better coming out of it. Because how does Big E look better? He beats the guy that Xavier already beat. It's like when Xavier beat Bobby Lashley before Kofi lost him at the pay-per-view. It's like, how did that make anyone look better? Especially since there was no follow-up with Xavier pinning the WWE champion and just never mentions it again, and they move on, whatever.
Well, it's WWE, so the answer to trying to predict what they're going to do is throw out all logic and then think of the exact opposite of what you thought was going to happen. There's no logic to their booking.
Well, we've thrown out all the worst case scenarios, so I think we got our ground covered. I think he could do this.
Find one that's probably worse. And speaking of
Shane McMahon's gonna win it. Shane McMahon.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, what's happening?
I was gonna say, speaking of no logic, let's go to the women's side of the bracket. So we have Zelina Vega, who deleted Carmella, going up against Dewdrop, who's defeated Shayna Baszler in the finals. Now, for those of you who didn't watch last week, I was really, really convinced that Shayna was going to make the finals and maybe even win this thing, because I thought they were bringing back her old NXT gimmick. Holy shit, was I wrong. She lost to Dewdrop. I'm not happy about that. Now, I kind of wish Nick was here this week, and unfortunately he wasn't able to be, because I thought he had some pretty good points about maybe them bringing back her being Piper Niven again, which I guess would make sense, but I don't know where the hell they're going with this, other than maybe James's idea of, hey, Zelina Vega looks good in a crown.
So, I'm sorry. I do think Zelina Vega is very likely to win, which would also make Nick, who is not here, very happy. But because I don't think there's a snowball's chance in hell that we have a Piper 316 moment. They don't care. This match is going to go 3 minutes, and they're going to get no reaction because it's in Saudi Arabia. I don't know. I don't want to say even more messed up things, so I'll just segue on. I think there's a very good chance Zelina wins, and I will say that I think, I mean, this isn't saying much because they've all been terribly short, more so than terrible, but I think the Carmella Zelina Vega match has been the only interesting match in this whole tournament. I think they pulled off the heel versus heel dynamic pretty well, and it was fun, and that's the only bright spot in this tournament. And even then, it came at the expense of Toni Storm and Liv Morgan, so it wasn't that bright of a spot. I hated this. I hated Shayna Baszler losing. I don't think Dewdrop is ever going to be over the way they want, and I think Zelina Vega winning is the best case scenario at this point, because she will at least, like James said last week, live the gimmick very well.
To your point on how short this match is going to be, I have the times again this week from the last two semifinal matches. Carmelo versus Zelina Vega went 2 minutes and 41 seconds, and Dewdrop versus Shayna Baszler went 2 minutes and 46 seconds.
That's disgusting.
They're still not giving these girls any time.
At least interesting. That was the only interesting match in this whole tournament so far. Like, they actually did pull off the heel versus heel dynamic well, so I'll give them kudos on that. Actually, kudos to Carmella in general, who decided to break character in an interview to praise Liv Morgan and how she's been screwed over. So, like, props to them for making the most of this terrible, terrible situation they're all in. James, I'm sorry. I've cut you off twice.
No. You are echoing how I feel, so thank you for saying it better than I could. I
doubt that, but okay.
Queen Dewdrop. Just hear that for a second. Queen Dewdrop. Do you think we're getting that?
It sounds like a terrible Disney movie.
It's a coin flip. I think it's a coin flip, but yeah, I can see us getting that.
Actually, you know what? It sounds like a DreamWorks movie that went straight to DVD.
That was just friggin' rude. But beyond
Where's the lie?
That, just harshness. Wow. I want to be excited because either of the women winning it, it's a nice feather in their cap when they don't really have any feathers in their cap at this point. And I'm a big Zelina mark, and I'm rooting for Dewdrop as well. But why would I believe that this is the match that's gonna break the mold of this tournament and go long? Why? And am I gonna believe that Zelina Vega is gonna beat Dewdrop in 2 minutes? Like, come on.
Yep.
So
because the women's match, and they have the most powerful move, which is a roll up.
You're right. And I was gonna say, because I know we have another tournament that we have to talk about, how much I love tournaments in wrestling. I think tournaments in wrestling are awesome, whether it's to crown a champion or a number one contender or whatever. I love tournaments, but man, this was tough. I feel empty after watching it. And that's the last feeling you want to feel when watching something. So
yeah, and I'm sorry, I know we got to move on to a more important tournament. That's because of how it's presented. But last week I was not into the idea of Zelina winning at all. Like, I love Zelina, but someone who never won matches in WWE before winning a tournament did not sit right with me. But now that Shayna Baszler, Toni Storm, and Liv Morgan are all out of this tournament, it has to go to Zelina. It's the only part that makes sense. Dewdrop winning it, it's going to be a fun little celebration, and then for a couple weeks she's going to come out with it, and it's going to get really bad really, really fast. Or at least with Zelina, we will get some entertainment value out of it going forward. And as much as, a lot of people don't like Baron Corbin, he got his money's worth out of that King of the Ring when he rode that as far as he could and made the most of it. I think Zelina can do the same thing, where I think Dewdrop, it lasts for 3-4 weeks and then it's slowly phased out completely.
We give AEW a lot of flack about their women's division, but at least they're booked well. They need to build their talent a bit better and maybe bring in some more and put them more on TV. But at least they're booked well. These women, and these are talented women, and I like a lot of WWE's women's roster. But good Lord, their booking is ghastly, and it's just
ghastly.
Yeah, a lot of Pokemon Go today. It's Halloween season. All right, let's cover that other tournament James was talking about. New Japan's Pro Wrestling G1 tournament finals are now officially set. They are going to be Okada versus Bushi. The winner of that will face the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion at Wrestle Kingdom in January. That champion is currently Shingo, but James, this is your account, so please take it away.
I know there is a lot of emotion going on with the end of this tournament. We had a lot of mystery going at the end of this block, which was going to see living legend Kazuchika Okada versus Jeff Cobb. And Jeff Cobb has been booked as an absolute unit throughout this tournament. He broke records. He looked good. He beat top talent. And people were excited to see what would come. But hey, Wrestling 101, you build a massive heel so the top babyface looks good beating him. And that's what happened with Okada taking out Cobb and setting up for the finals, Okada versus Kodabushi. Again, I'm seeing some debate about this tournament because we've seen this match. We've seen Kodabushi and we've seen Okada wrestle before. They did it at the last Wrestle Kingdom. And even beyond that, this will be the third time that Kodabushi is in the finals, 3 years in a row. We don't quite know where this can go, We don't know if Kodabushi is going to win and take on Shingo Takagi. We don't know if Okada is going to wrestle Takagi and get redemption for not becoming the first new IWGP World Champion. He lost to Shingo to crown this inaugural new champion. No, he didn't. Oh, no, I apologize. He lost to Shingo after Ibushi had to drop the belt as being the inaugural champion. Sorry, guys. There was a lot of turnaround with New Japan's booking this year. But at the end of the day, no matter what we're going to get, no matter what match we get, no matter who wins, I guarantee you one thing. We're going to be getting some great wrestling. Kodabushi he declared himself the god of wrestling last year, and I'd be hard-pressed to find many people who could challenge him for that title. And Okada is New Japan royalty at this point. He is the longest reigning IWGP champion. His last reign with the title, or his legendary reign with the title, which was dethroned by current AEW champion Kenny Omega, was the thing of wrestling myth. It was so beautiful a reign that if you guys haven't seen it, please go back and watch it. So no matter what, we're seeing the best of the best competing at the finals of this tournament, and whoever is going to face the champion, who might not be Shingo Takagi, because he's going to have some defenses, because he has people who beat him in this tournament, and typically the champion will have to defend that title before we get to Wrestle Kingdom. No matter what, we've got some exciting stuff going. And in the background, we have the real IWGP champion, Will Ospreay, who had to drop the belt because of injury. But he's still parading around with another belt, claiming he's the real champion. We could see him get involved sooner rather than later. All I'm hoping is that this somehow leads to the Forbidden Door opening with New Japan and AEW. And my God, give me my Golden Lovers, whatever, reunion or battle. And anybody else?
I was gonna say, I think that Okada reign, the long one you mentioned, started when before I graduated college, and by the time it was over, I had graduated college, gotten a job, and lost that job. It was forever. Danny, I mentioned before you were just starting to get into New Japan. How much of the tournament did you watch, and what are your thoughts on this finals match?
So I'm excited for this finals match. I haven't seen every match from the tournament yet, but it's been a fun watch. And you know what? I think maybe some people complaining about Okada and Ibushi are definitely Western fans. I don't think any of the Japanese fans are complaining about this. I think they're thrilled about it, because that sounds like a very Western thing for a wrestling fan to complain about. But I'm excited. I'm excited for it. And yeah, like James said, no matter what, like, we're gonna get some really, really good matches. So, you know, I don't think there's too much to complain about. I have a question for you, James. How many hours of wrestling do you think you watch in a year?
Oh God. Ooh. See, before this podcast, you know, it was a hobby. Now it definitely feels like work. I'll be the first to admit I have never successfully watched every tournament match of the G1. It is exhausting. It's on at a time where I should be sleeping, even if I'm typically not, but I'll be tired. Oh God. I don't want to answer this question because I'm actually afraid to. I'm afraid to answer this question because it can't be good for me.
I was told I was told there would be no math.
I think at the end of the day, I think the answer is I need to go out and touch grass. Maybe a little bit.
So because I wasn't going to go a whole episode without mentioning this, but like last week you promised that if we got to 100 subscribers, you would write a rap. And since you mentioned Pokemon earlier, you know, I was thinking about the Poke Rap, where you could do a wrestler rap and you just name off wrestler names and, you know, in a way where they rhyme. And I think all of our viewers would love that, and I confidently speak for them when I say that.
In James's defense, the pokey rap never actually rhymed. So if you could just rattle off wrestlers and with a solid cadence, I'd take it. I think you scared him off.
Yeah, James. He's not here. He left.
Oh no, he's definitely getting something that is definitely worth.
He went to the Poconos, guys. He's gone.
No, I'm back. I was just literally running away. I was running away from the idea of this. I
was expecting you to come back with a Pokemon.
I mean, there are enough in here, but if not, I could at least show you a cat.
I'll take you there. I like both of those things, clearly.
Yeah, that's right.
that was unfortunately good, Nick.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that wraps things up. No pun intended there.
We do have one more thing to cover, guys, and that's just a preview of what's to come. Impact running a pay-per-view this Saturday. So I know we cover a lot, but hey, add Impact to the list, guys, and we will be reviewing it on next week's episode.
Sure, we will.
I will be reviewing it on next week's episode.
Well, if we're also going to throw random things in, shout out Tony D'Angelo over on NXT. I love him, and he's actually going to get me to watch that show. Anyway, like I said, we're out of time here. Thank you so much for watching. Adios mio.
Before we go, hey, Manscaped, look at James's mustache. You know, I'm just saying, there's something there.
I confided in this man. I don't know the future of this mustache, and I think that is why he's getting them out now, because it's very possible, guys, this mustache will be gone next week.
Yeah, if that's gone next week, I'm gonna be depressed.
God. Can I wrap up now?
Yeah.
You could poke a wrap up now.
Love it.
No, that's clearly your thing. Anyway, thank you so much. Again, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to follow us on all our social media platforms, which you can find in the description, or I'm sure Dave is going to throw them right up here somewhere. So for myself, Nick Cummings, James Gisante, and Danny Hernandez, thank you so much for watching, and be sure to get to know your kitten.